here we are again, the Tutto Bene girls, and we're here to really show you something really nice today on our cooking show.
And we are making, well, I'm making a pepper, sausage, and potatoes with a little bit of tomato. And that is really good. And Jeannie, you're making?
I'm going to be making Veal Spezzato over pappardelle. And these two dishes are what are really popular in the Italian families. So you're going to enjoy our show.
Back in a minute.
Okay. Okay, now Veal Spezzato, it's not that hard, but the most important thing is if you have to simmer it for an hour, if you want a nice tender veal. So I start off with some olive oil in my pan, about 2 or 3 tablespoons, right? And I'm going to put in some garlic. I'm going to smash my garlic with a knife, because when you smash it, you get a better flavor. Here I go. About 3 or 4 pieces. That's 3. 4. Okay, and then I'm going to cut up an onion. Because this was such a big onion, I'm cutting some of this onion up. Slicing it. I used to do this at weddings years ago. They used to serve it at Italian weddings, Veal Spezzato, as a side dish. But now they serve it over pappardelle, or you can have it just with plain Italian bread. And I think that's enough of onion, because this was an extra big onion. I'm going to take this to the stove, and I'm going to saute this a little before I add the veal. And I'll show you what else I'm going to do. See, I have sauteed my onions and my garlic with some olive oil. Now I'm going to add my veal, chopped veal. It's a pound. That's a pound of chopped veal. And I'm going to saute it a little more before I add my wine. Just a little bit. And I'm going to put some pepper on it. No salt, because salt will dry it out. You don't want to put your salt yet. As soon as this is sauteed just a little, I'll add my white wine, and then I'll lower my gas to simmer. And it has to simmer for 1 hour if you want a real tender veal. Now that I have sauteed my veal just a little bit, you don't need a lot, you add 1 cup of white wine. Any kind of cheap wine is fine. You don't have to be a real expensive wine. Now you have to put this on simmer. And it's just, you don't even have to look at it. You put the cover on, and you simmer it for 1 hour. And then I'll show you what else we're going to be doing. We can add our peas, our mushrooms, the last 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cover this. I'm going to let it simmer for an hour. And when it's time, I'll be back and I'll show you what else we're doing. Okay.
Hi, here I am with my peppers, my sausage, and my potatoes. Now, I do it separate. It takes a little time, but you know what? That's okay. I have here red peppers. I usually use red. You can use the green, but the green come up on me, so I use red peppers. I have in here olive oil, about 1/4 cup, and I put that in with the peppers and parsley and a little salt and a little pepper. Now this is all prepared to go. I'm going to bake this covered for about 20 minutes and then uncovered for another 20 minutes. Here's our camera woman here, and she's doing a great job, and she's going to show you exactly what it looks like. I've sliced them long, and I've used about 6 large peppers, and they're just beautiful. If you can see the bright color and everything, it's just beautiful. Now, the sausage. This is 2 pounds, and I've put onion in here about quarter of the onion. It was a large Vidalia onion, right, Jeannie? The Vidalia onion, that's what I like to use. I don't use anything else. That's mostly what I use when I use onion. This is 2 pounds. I did not poke them. I did not poke the sausage because it's very lean and there's not much fat in it, so I didn't want all the juice to come out. But this is going to go in the oven, covered for 40 minutes, but I'm going to uncover it at the last 10. The next thing, I forgot to tell you that I put this in a dish and I microwaved it for 5 minutes, just to cook them a little bit so they'll be ready for the oven. Now the third step is I have onions, I slice my potatoes, and I am pan frying them for a short while to cook them, and then I am putting the whole thing together. Here I go, I've got my wonderful sausage covered, and I am putting it in the oven at 350, and I'll keep this in there for about 20 minutes, and then another 20 minutes more. I'll uncover it, okay? So I'm putting that in, and I have my peppers, which are going in also, and these will stay in about a half hour to 40 minutes. Okay.
I'm going to show you something a little different. I went on the farm last week, and the woman at the farm, she has an old farm, was telling me about this recipe. And what she calls it, this is a different kind of squash. They call it buttercup squash. And I cut it in half, as you can see. And I put a little water in the dish, and I microwaved it for about 6 minutes just to soften it, to help the process when we want to cook it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a meatloaf on top of this butternut squash.
Oh, that sounds good.
Doesn't that sound delicious? So you stop beating those eggs.
I'm going to stop beating those eggs. I have 2 eggs here.
Just like you would do your meatloaf mix. You do the same thing. And I'm going to be getting the dish to put them in.
Go. Whipping up my eggs, and I'm going to turn this over to Jeannie.
Because we're using dry breadcrumbs instead of wet, I'm going to put some water with the eggs. And then we're going to put the hamburger. This is a pound of just regular, low-fat hamburger, ground beef. Beef, not hamburger, I'm sorry. Hamburger, beef. Ground beef. You could use turkey or veal if you want, or you could use the 3 mixes. Go ahead, Jill, to start steaming. Where's your wooden spoon?
I think it's on the stove.
Use a wooden spoon to sear it.
Oh, well, I'm using a fork. I'm going to use a fork first, Jeannie.
So far, this is the egg, the water, and the beef. Now I'm going to put some bally cheese. You see this? Pecorino Romano from Tedesco's.
The best.
The best. Put a couple of little fistfuls of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to put some breadcrumbs, not too much, because I might need a little more water. Because I don't want it to come too hard.
That's about like a half a cup, Jeannie.
Yeah,
About a
half a cup, 3/4 of a cup.
Yeah.
Now we're going to stir this all up.
That's the flavored breadcrumb.
Flavored breadcrumbs.
Yeah, flavored breadcrumb.
And you want it a little moist because you don't want a dry meatloaf.
Absolutely not.
You want it a little moist. And if you have to add more water, you can add more water. Okay, I'm going to just put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of this baking dish. And I'm going to put my squash in here that's softened from the microwave.
From the microwave, yeah.
Right.
Very good.
And now, Gilda, you're going to put
Okay.
all this on top.
Okay, here I go.
Make a nice big hunk.
I will. Okay. You don't want to use all of this, Jeannie.
Yeah,
Oh, you do? Oh my
yeah.
goodness. This is a meal.
that's right.
This is a meal. Oh my
right.
heaven. And this is just a pound?
That's
Jeannie,
all,
that's a
pound.
pound? Oh
Yep.
my heavens. Okay. See, I'm learning this myself because I haven't made this before.
Neither have I. This is
Oh,
something
this
new.
is, well, we're both learning stuff, and I'm sure it's gonna come wonderful, wonderful,
When they
wonderful.
eat the meatloaf, they'll have the butternut squash underneath, and that's a healthy meal. Okay, now, Montreal steak seasoning is really good. It's peppery, but it's so good when you use it, just as a flavor. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this on top, just to give it some flavor.
And it's kind of salty, so I would not use
No,
salt.
I never put salt.
Don't ever
It's
put
cheese.
salt, because that is kind of salty.
And then,
But it's
if
tasty.
you don't have to, but this, I love pinoli nuts, so,
I know you do.
but this will make it look so beautiful. You
Oh,
sprinkle
that
some
was
of these on the
nice.
top, all over.
Excellent.
And this adds a little bit more to it. This will make a
Definitely.
wonderful dish. Now, I'm gonna put this in the oven, uncovered, on a 350 oven for about 40 minutes. And
Oh,
it
that
should be
long,
done.
huh, Jean? About
Yeah,
40
usually
minutes?
if it's a whole meatloaf, it's an hour, but
Yeah.
40 minutes is plenty.
Okay.
And then it'll be ready to serve. As you can see, this is what it looks like when it's all done, and it's very, very tender. See, I can cut it with the wooden spoon. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add
Oh,
a pound of
goodness.
sliced, these are baby bellas, mushrooms,
Oh, don't those look good?
and that's gonna simmer for a while. And I have about 2 cups of tomato sauce, and I'm gonna put this in. And the mushrooms will cook in that. The last thing I'll do is put my peas, because I don't like them to overcook.
Are
And,
those frozen, Jeannie?
yeah, frozen
They are
peas. And I'm gonna put some basil, a couple of sprigs of basil in this. And then I'm gonna show you how, if you have fresh garden tomatoes too, this is a trick my mother-in-law had showed me. You make a cut like a cross, if you wanna use fresh tomato, and you squeeze out all the water and the seeds, like that, because you don't want that in there. And then you cut this up in chunks, and you add this to it. You don't have to, but if you have fresh tomatoes from the garden, this is wonderful.
Haven't they been wonderful? So meaty and everything? Oh, my girlfriend Lucy gave me some, and they're just wonderful.
So now this is gonna simmer till the mushrooms get cooked. It won't take you long. It's gonna bake only 5 minutes. And the sauce will be simmering also. It doesn't take long to simmer the sauce either. And then I'm gonna add my peas. But in the meantime, I have my water on. I'm gonna put some of my salted water. I got some sea salt. And I'll cook my pappardelle. This is fresh pappardelle that I bought at Vendor, but you can also buy dried pappardelle. But this is what we're gonna pour this over our pappardelle, a pound of pappardelle, okay? And I'll just cover this for a while and let it simmer for a few minutes. And that's it. Fun afternoon. I went to one of these little stands in Massachusetts, right? And no, I'm sorry, in Cumberland. Cumberland, right?
Oh, yeah.
My daughter took me to it, and these people grow their own squash.
Vegetables.
So this is the Hubbard squash, which a lot of you are very familiar with. This is the best one to make a squash pie, a fresh squash pie from scratch. This is a different one, other than a butternut squash. If you can see how orange it is, they call this autumn gold. And it tastes almost like a sweet potato when you cook it.
Oh, wow.
And if you
It's
can see it,
different.
it's very different.
Yeah.
And this they call amber. This is an amber one. So I'm going to have a lot of fun cooking with these different kinds of squashes, but I just had to buy them because they all look so good.
Leave it to you, Jeannie.
Actually, she had a prize-winning regular butternut squash that weighed 18 pounds, and she showed me. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I bought some nice fresh corn there, too. It was so good.
It's
But-
good getting all
And the
this.
one that we used in the oven, they call that buttercup. that is a very rare squash. She saved the seeds and she grew them, and they call that a buttercup squash. I thought you'd like that. This is all done. It's only been cooking about 5-10 minutes, the sauce. Now, I'm going to add one package of my sugar in the raw because I like to give it a little bit of a sweeter taste. Just what it looks like. Now, I have frozen peas. You want them to stay nice and green, so you just pour them in here. You don't have to if you don't like peas, but I love peas.
How much is that, Jeannie? About a cup and a
That's
half?
almost 2 cups.
Almost 2 cups.
Okay, now all I do is shut it off. I don't want the peas to overcook, and it's all done. So what I'm going to do now, this is all done. I have my salted boiling water, right? And this is my pappardelle, a pound of fresh pappardelle, but you can use the dried one if you want. And I'm going to put this in my water to cook. Should take only about 5 minutes to cook because it's fresh, you know, and you don't want to overcook it. So I'm going to let that cook for about 5 minutes. I'm going to strain it, and then we're going to pour our veal spezzato right over it.
Hello. I just took my peppers out of the oven. They've been in there about 40 minutes. Now, if you want them to get really soft, you leave them in longer, but I'm going to put them back in for about another 10 to 15 minutes, so the total time would be about 50 minutes that I've had them in there. See how I've done my potatoes. This is something we just added. I love potatoes with my peppers and sausage. So I'm going to just add this to my peppers, and they are going to cook a little bit more, but they absorb the pepper, and it just a beautiful, beautiful dish. This is nice to take if somebody says, oh, bring something, potluck, you can take this. But what I'm doing is mixing it all up, and the next thing will be the sausage out, and I am using a scissor instead of a knife to cut it. And I'm cutting it into these little inch pieces, and we're going to add this to the peppers, which are still in the oven, and they've been in there, I would say 50 minutes. So this was in about 45 minutes, okay? Yeah, at least. Okay, so I'm going to finish cutting this.
Isn't that a nice little trick?
That's a nice little, and they come nice and even.
When you cut pizza, you could cut it with a scissor.
Yeah.
Okay, my pappadelli's all cooked, and I strained it, and I'm going to pour it right in this dish, like this. I'm going to pour all this delicious veal spezzato right over my pappadelli. What a meal this makes.
That looks so
It is so delicious, and if you don't want to use the pasta, you can do it just in a dish. But this makes a wonderful meal. A pound of pasta should do it. So, because you don't want too much pasta. And then I'm going to sprinkle it with some cheese. Okay, I'm sprinkling it with a little bit of cheese. And it's all ready to eat. Doesn't that look delicious? And the veal is nice and tender.
I just took my peppers out that I have placed my potatoes in, and I am making this huge dish here. I am not pouring the juice in because although there's very, very little fat in this, believe me, very little fat. And I'm taking my onions, and I forgot to tell you that I did use 3 large cloves of garlic when I did the peppers. Finish this dish off. Potatoes, peppers, sausage, onion, garlic, little parsley, little bit of salt and pepper. These are fresh tomatoes that my girlfriend gave me, and I put it in the blender for just a split, not even a minute, and it's all fresh and beautiful. I did put a little parsley in here, and I am just going to add some of this, and this will make it really moist, especially if the sausage is a little dry. I picked up the sausage in Centerdale. I haven't tried it before, but I'm hoping that it's really good. Okay, now, this is all done. I just put the fresh tomato that I had put in the blender, and I just gave it a little more taste. It's just going to make it delicious. And there's just, like I said, not a lot of potatoes, but you can eliminate the potato. And that's it. I'm going to put this back in the oven for about 10 more minutes and done.
You may know, if you ever heard of ciabatta bread. Ciabatta bread is such a wonderful, wonderful, crunchy when you can see. And it has a lot of holes in it, but it's got a crunchy crust. And this is so delicious for dipping it in sauce or anything. But we have our roasted garlic, which I put olive oil, and I put a few cloves of garlic, and I microwaved it till it toasted a little bit and it got a little golden brown. And if you want, you can even put some balsamic vinegar, or whoever likes red pepper flakes, you can do that too. But this tastes wonderful with your meal to just dip and oil. Wonderful.
And back again with the peppers and everything, and I'm going to show you how I put in this dish. This is a lot. This was like 2 pounds of sausage and about 5 or 6 peppers and 3 potatoes. So this is quite a bit. Now you can do this on the top of the stove also. So the finished product, you can serve an army with this. It's quite a bit. I did buy a lot, but that's okay. You can fry this on top of the stove. It'll take a little less time. Putting it in the oven takes a little more time. So you can do the sauces, the peppers, and the potatoes all on top of the stove. It won't take you as long. Okay, there's the finished product.
Okay, and here's our buttercup squash meatloaf. Something very different. The pinoli nuts on top look wonderful. The Montreal steak seasoning. And when you scoop it out, you get your squash with it. And something very different. All right, here we are with our finished product. And boy, does it look good.
And we're going to eat some of this, and then I'm going to bring it home to Bob.
Oh.
And he's going to try some too.
Oh, this is for a feast. This is enough for a feast.
Okay.
So that's this is on page 152 if you want the recipe. This recipe won an award in the Providence Journal for one of the best recipes of the year. As the Veal Spezzato, it's on 152 and Molto Bene cookbook. Those of you who have a Molto Bene cookbook.
Now the basic recipe for peppers is on page 79 in the Tutto Bene book, and you can do whatever you want with it. It's not a set rule, so I did it a little different, but you can use that page.
Okay, ciao.
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 Ciao. Till next time.
Yep.
Salud.
That's good.
All right. Okay.